Hi, this is Justin Sargent. I'm running for state assembly in the 81st Assembly District in Wisconsin. I was unable to make it to the League of Women Voters taping, so this is an addendum. I will be answering the questions which I have not seen other than the first question without any preparation. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to call or email me. Both items of information are on my website.
What is your professional, educational, and civic background that qualifies you for this position?
I have worked in the state Senate for Senator Robson as her chief of staff. I have worked on legislation from the Great Lakes Compact to protecting senior care from federal cuts. I have operated her office and worked on a whole variety of issues within that. I've also managed all of her constituent casework, which means that I'm very adept at cutting through red tape and helping people. Which is important because I see the state assembly as a means to help people and make government work for them. I grew up in the Madison area. I went to school here and received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. I have been very civically involved in the area from my early years of scouting all the way up through serving on Vera Court in my neighborhood. I'm active on my PTO, and a number of other community organizations. Northside folks and neighbors will see me at most every event. My whole family is very involved in our area. So I think it's important that we have an active, involved, knowledgeable state assembly person who can get in, hit the ground running, and get some things done.
What do you believe is the most urgent issue for your district, and how would you address it?
I think there's a number of most urgent issues because each of us is a little bit different. As I'm knocking on doors throughout the district, from Mazomanie to the town of Burke, I'm hearing a lot about healthcare, a lot about jobs and the economy, and also about the environment and education. But I think the most pressing issue is probably healthcare because it ties across all of those issue areas and is connected to everything that we're working on. So I would say healthcare overall is the major issue. People from Mazomanie to Madison talk about the availability and the accessibility and the cost of healthcare. A couple of things I've worked on with Senator Robson to address that was senior care. We had to recently fight the federal government to make sure that they did not cut senior care, which is an amazing program that helps our seniors have affordable medication. We also tried something bold, which was Healthy Wisconsin, a program that would have allowed people to buy in to the state employee benefits, which I think is really important, but it also would have allowed people to keep their own doctor and their own plan. It did not pass the Assembly, but it did pass the Senate. There is currently work being done on a new version of that, which I think is good because I think we need to take into account some of the needs of small business as we move forward and tackle the healthcare issue.
If you are elected, you are coming into the legislature during an economic downturn, and the state government has a huge gap between revenues and needed and wanted outlays. What do you think the state budget needs to prioritize?
I think there's a big concern with the state budget and our priorities. This is what legislators are elected to do, is sort through our priorities and figure out how to fund them. One of the phenomena we've seen recently in Wisconsin is robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking from the transportation fund segregated money, the fees that people have paid, and then using it for other purposes. Even if those purposes are worthy, I don't like the taking from one pot to another. I think there's a agreement, an understanding, a promise that was made by the people paying those fees that they would go toward the intended purposes. If we need to fund this priority, we should come to the people and say, we have to raise revenues or we have to cut elsewhere to pay for this. I think that people want openness and transparency in their government, and I think this is a really important step toward that. So one of the things I'd like to see in the budget process right at the very beginning is no longer stealing from segregated fees. Hunting, fishing, transportation, whatever they may be. I think that's really important. We have to take a hard look at our budget because we don't have the revenue. But we also have to look at some of the loopholes that have grown over time and allow certain groups, some large businesses and such, to unfairly use tax loopholes to not pay their fair share. I think that Wisconsin residents, my neighbors in the 81st, are willing to pay their fair share in taxes if they're getting a good bang for their buck. So I think that's important. I think transparency and honesty in our budgeting process is absolutely crucial.
There are continuing calls for a number of reforms to the campaign process. Do you believe that reforms are necessary, and what do you believe are the best reforms the legislature should address?
I think there are a number of reforms that absolutely must happen to recapture the Wisconsin idea of open, transparent government. I think the first and foremost thing that we must do is pass an impartial justice bill. Something that I worked on with Senator Robson and others was a proposal that would have shifted Wisconsin Supreme Court races to a publicly funded system. We have to get the big money out of our judicial system. People in Wisconsin have an expectation that they'll have fair and impartial justice. Right now, with the way that the campaigns are going and so negative and so much money, I think that we're at jeopardy of that. So I think that we must relook at funding for Supreme Court races in particular. I would also like to see transparency in issue ads. I think it's important that when an ad is put up, we know who's paid for it, and that way people can evaluate what the impact should be of that ad. If I know that this group paid for it and this group is comprised of these entities or these people, then I have a better idea of what they're saying and what their motive is. I think that's really important for our electoral process.
Once the elections are finished, the public confidence in this legislature is at an all-time low. What steps do you think the legislature will need to take to restore the trust of the public?
I think it's vital that legislators set the right tone. One of the things that I worked on with Senator Robson as her chief of staff was restoring decorum, respect, and an ability to work across party lines with your colleagues. In recent years in Wisconsin, we've seen an inability of Republicans and Democrats to talk about getting things done for Wisconsin. And I think it's really crucial that we get back to a point that we can talk and work together on our shared priorities. We don't have to agree. Sometimes we'll never agree with our opponents. But we have to get along, and we have to set that tone. The other thing that I think is really crucial there is that we have to develop more transparency and openness in government. I think Wisconsin Eye, which is something that Senator Robson and I and many others worked to get into the legislature so that the public can view the arguments and the debate and the discussion on issues. I think that is a good step. I think events like this with the League of Women Voters is crucial also because it puts people out there and lets them see what we're thinking, what we're talking about. So I'm very supportive of this. I think also that legislators need to be out in the public and available to people to bounce ideas off of and to respond to issues and concerns. I think that's vital that we do that. But sunshine laws, transparency, I think that that's really key to opening government back up and recapturing the trust of the people.